Okay.
Good to go. Perfect. Okay, welcome to Habitat. I'm Regina Lutzinger here with the amazing Joanna Manousis. She's going to dive into her newest exhibition called Iris Obscura. A couple of housekeeping things right now. We currently are still having our Glass 52 show on display. So whether it be you view it onto our website at habitat.com or please come in. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. We'd love to have you in to experience all the amazing glass artworks we have on display. Also, we're getting geared up for our next auction. The dates haven't been decided yet, but just keep that in a loop of your head. So if you're looking for an amazing glass sculptures that are going to be within your budget too, please look out for that. And if you are missing any Zooms, please feel free to visit our YouTube page, which is Habitat Galleries, where you're able to view all of these amazing Zooms and experience all of the glass art, as well as their process and the amazing artists who take the time to actually talk to us. So go ahead, Joanna, take it away. And thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Regina. I was going to ask you just before I get started, could you give me the authority to share my screen?
Yes, I believe I already made you a co-host, so I think you should be fine.
Okay, let's have a look. First of all, guys, thank you for joining me. I don't have one of those screenshots behind my head. This is my exhibition behind me. So I'm just going to show you the scale. This is real. I'm touching it. And so it might be a bit echoey because I'm in a really big room right now. But if we have time, I'll give you a little bit of a tour later. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Here we go. And we'll get started. Okie dokie. Right. Okay. So my name's Joanna Manousis, and it's great to be here. I've been working in glass now for 20 years. I can't believe it. 2 decades goes pretty quickly when you're completely enthralled and invested in this material. And at the moment, I'm doing a PhD at the National Glass Centre in Sunderland, England. And my thesis is called Casting Self-Reflection, 3-dimensional mirrors within contemporary glass art practice. So just to give you kind of a little bit of a background, let's see if I can navigate this. Mirrors have really only been applied historically on blown and sheet glass applications. So here are a few plates to show you how glass sheet was originally made. There were 2 main ways, the muff or the broad technique, where a cylinder of glass would be blown, cut and then splayed out. And you can see the image on the right of some glass artists, cutting into one of those cylinders. And then the second technique, which was invented by the French in the 1700s, was to ladle glass from the furnace onto a copper table, and then they would use a roller to roll out the glass. So it was somewhat a casting technique, but the glass would have to be meticulously ground and polished in order for the mirror to create a reflection. And so mirrors are really only reflective when they're applied to pristine, clear surfaces. So the glass has to be smooth and there cannot be any opacity to the surface. Now, when I started working with glass, I wanted to use all techniques. I didn't want to be kind of limited in my ideas by one particular method. But after completing my master's degree at Alfred University in New York, I had a residency at the Corning Museum of Glass. And what I wanted to achieve were a set of distillery jars that each contained negative spaces of objects that represented individuals in my life. And so this piece, which is called Distilled Portrait, was the first in this iteration of jars. And I wanted to personify the collector as a magpie. And the reason for that is because magpies are one of the few species that have the gene for self-awareness. They recognize themselves in mirrors. And some of you may know the saying for women that love jewelry, oh, she's such a magpie. That's because they love to acquire shiny objects and they hoard them in their nests. So I thought, well, you know, if I want to create a negative space inside the glass, I'll use what's called a core casting technique. So essentially it's a core of investment material, which is usually plastisilica. And so the glass flows into a mold, but it can't penetrate where that core is placed. And naively, I thought, well, if I have this negative space in the glass, I can mirror it and have this incredible, you know, experience where the viewer can see themselves within the bird. And then there's this triangulated observation between the viewer and the bird looking into the jar at its reflection. However, because the glass, when it's cast, it has this opaque kind of satin surface to it. When you mirror it, it doesn't look reflective. It looks like cast aluminium or brushed silver. So this sent me on literally over a decade-long pursuit in trying to create a reflective dimensional space, because I felt that it would be a really rich vocabulary to have the viewer's gaze combined with an entity within the glass. So the glass is literally a lens for this negative space inside. So I'm just going to go through a couple of pictures of pieces that I've made in the past. This is a sizable piece. It's called Dominant Sophia, and it echoes the rose windows that you would see in a church. But rather than the glass infiltrating light, the light is reflected to the viewer. And inside these pieces, there are negative spaces of wheat kernels, which I was hoping to reflect the viewer within every grain. Again, kind of alluding to us being grains within this complex construct that is society. However, because of the stippled surface of the wheat, I wasn't able to attain a full reflection. And so again, the surface has to be completely smooth. This is a piece called Demeter's Rose. It's 6 feet in the round, and it took me about a year to make. So this is quite a sizable piece. A lot of people think that my pieces are the size of a brooch, but they really take up the wall space. This ended up being a little bit too large for me to carry out an acid polishing treatment so that the interior space within those wheat kernels and seed pods would be clear enough to mirror. Just a little detail of that. So these glass pieces are held to the wall like jewels. So I use, you know, claw setting techniques so that every glass piece is elevated from the wall. And just to show you some pieces that use negative detail. So this is a piece called Par Diamonds, I should say. So it kind of delineates as it expands, and the internal spaces are reverse painted to allude to decaying marble. So this is taken from the a motif that was in Sudeley Castle, Catherine Parr's tomb, who was the 6th wife of Henry VIII, just to show you some details. This piece is actually, there were 2 iterations and one is still available. And you can see that negative space inside, but it has solidity because of the paint that's been applied. So here's a piece before the mirroring process. I thought that making my interior spaces from a faceted piece of glass would give me a pristine enough surface. I'm trying to get my computer to start here. So what I can do is I can give you a tour of the show while this is booting if needed. I'm so sorry about that. So shall I do that? Shall I give you a tour?
Please give us the unabridged tour. I love it.
Okay. Maybe we can come back to the presentation in just a second, but this is the Athenaeum. It's a really beautiful space here in Sunderland. So I've been studying now for 3 years, looking at dimensional mirrors, and I'm going to come to Distilled Portrait, which was the piece that I was just showing you.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so you saw in my image there the first iteration, and this is the new and improved, I guess. So taking all of the kind of, the research that I've been doing over the last 10 years and some in the PhD, I wanted to recreate this piece. Now, it's not quite there in terms of reflectivity. It nearly is, but I will show you some of the testing and what needs to happen. So essentially what I did was I took 4 of the most utilized glasses within the studio glass community, so that my research would be applicable to as many makers as possible. And I took the detail of an optical flat lens. So this is a lens, this was originally taken from a lens, so it has a pristine surface as a base model. And I applied various glasses to different mold mixes. And what happened was I was able to achieve this myriad of surface effects, whereby the mirror doesn't necessarily become reflective. And what I love is that, you can have all these different textures where, the mirror looks like moon rock, for example, or crocodile skin. I also was working with some boron nitride pastes, which is kind of like Teflon for molds. So when you apply it to a mold, it repels in certain areas. So these were lenses using an open face mold. And I was interested in how the mirror could become an aesthetic within itself. And so from those open face molds, I looked at enclosed molds, so a completely different mold application, whereby the negative space is in 3 dimensions. So there is the negative from where I take out the investment material. So very simple, but again, just seeing if there were consistencies between the lens and this enclosed shape. So for example, this is bullseye glass. A lot of glass artists will have heard of that material. This is also bullseye. So look at the difference, just by adding, different materials to my mold, I can get it to repel the glass from sticking. And so that's what we want with mirrors. We want the glass not to stick, so that when it's mirrored, it becomes reflective. So obviously these are quite simple forms, easy to extract. And everything is kind of culminating to the bird. So here are some, these are called mirror palettes. So here is the dimensional space of the magpie. And these are really pieces within themselves. So this is made with a mold that negates the need for wax, because steaming wax out of a mold actually can really interfere with the surface quality. So this is a tension set process whereby my core of the bird is suspended in 2 halves. So the mold kind of clamps together with the reservoir on the top around this core. So you're left with a really beautiful surface. And I can, although it's not as perfect as a blown mirror, I can identify myself in there. And this is using the boron nitride. So I've painted it onto the surface of the mold. And in this case, it's actually caused some sticking, which has given this black contaminated mirror. So it's not that one, method of working fits everything. When you start to change the form, the amount of glass flowing over the core, things do change. So that's what keeps you on your toes with glass. You can never quite understand it and harness it. So you're constantly, and then I just want, before I show you the really big piece, I just want to show you this piece, which is called Iris Obscura, which is actually I've been looking at the history of the mirror, which is really complex and fascinating. It's there's so many dualities, in what the mirror represented. In that, it's entwined with superstition and evil and good. It was suggested that the mirror was the all-seeing eye of God, that it reflected everything in its environment. And for me, I was interested in how the mirror is a tool for us to perceive what we can't, which is ourselves. I mean, now when we look in the mirror, it's like taking a breath. But it wasn't always that case. Mirrors were incredibly expensive, and it was only until the invention of sheet glass with the tin process, what we call float glass, that mirrors became available to the masses. So just to show you some of these pieces, this is the silhouette of an eye, and it's cast in solid glass. And what you see in this interior is a concave lens that's been made from a blown bubble of glass. So this is a negative space. And here, these trails here, this is actually the flow of molten glass hitting the surface of the mold. So I have to really relinquish any control here. I can't, physically polish this area. I have to let it be what it is. And with the mirror, it illuminates any inconsistencies. So it's almost like the sheen magic, literally magic eye effect in this devitrification pattern. And devitrification is when the surface of the glass kind of crystallizes, but it creates this amazing kind of like silvery drawing on the surface of that concave lens. This one has been cast in solid crystal, lead crystal, and it's been hydrofluorically polished inside. So that's basically a cocktail of hydrofluoric and sulfuric acid, which reacts with the lead content in the glass, and it brings everything to a high shine. It's a process which I wouldn't be able to do personally. It's incredibly toxic, and you wouldn't want to get it on your skin. So I actually work with crystal cutting fabricator in the West Midlands to do this. But he will be retiring in 2 years, and again, it's another process that is kind of dying because it's hard to get apprentices who want to cut glass. Now in this one, there's a kind of inverted reflection of the environment, just like an image would be at the back of the eye. This one just completely denies any reflective quality, although it is mirrored inside. There's been a sandblasting treatment on the surface, and then it has an oil application, so it gives this kind of radiant glow. And then this one has been deliberately cracked. And I played around with 3 different iterations of a cracked lens. And I wanted to kind of create a positive attribute to an otherwise negative. We all think of broken mirrors as being, superstitious and bad. But in this case, it's the only area, the crack is the only area that is actually reflective. And because the plaster, so the glass isn't broken, but the plaster base model was broken, and you start to see the materiality here of the lens when it was cast in plaster. So that's a complete piece of 4. So this piece is one, it's a study in itself for 4. And then this is obviously the largest piece in the exhibition. So this one's called Celeste, and it's inspired by a piece that I made in 2015 called Indra's Web. And so Indra's Web was a Hindu proverb, and the proverb was that we are all jewels in a complex construct, a web-like construct, and we all reflect each other. So we need each other in order for society to exist. And if you pluck one jewel from the web, the rest will falter. Doesn't matter what you do in the world, if you're a bus driver or a lawyer, an artist, everybody is needed for society to function. And I thought that was a really beautiful metaphor. And so I wanted the viewer to be reflected in these jewels, and also for it to take on the appearance of a globular starburst, because we're all made of carbon and the stars, they say. So in 2015, I made an installation of 50 of these, and they were made with hand-faceted pieces of glass, like this one. So incredibly labor intensive. There's an interior here of a prism. So it's a prism within a prism, the negative space of a prism within a solid prism. And again, held with claws. The thing with this piece is that I was starting to trial a different mold process using milled graphite. So these ones, there are 3 sizes. These are hot poured from the furnace into a multi-part graphite mold. And because I'm using graphite, the glass does not stick. So it allows me to make mass quantities in a much more expedient time that's less wasteful. I'm not, throwing away investment material after it's been fired. So it's much more environmentally friendly. It's less taxing on the body. And once you have the molds, I mean, are quite complicated to create and they are expensive. But once they're made, you can make many, many pieces. So with this installation, it's 440 individual units. It can be expanded or contracted. It can be smaller iterations. It can be larger. And in order to kind of cut up the monotony, I have 5 individually cast pieces in there. So the big ones that you can see are all kind of individual. I'm just going to turn my video around and I'm going to see if my computer's working. I'm so sorry. It's a brand new computer and I seem to be having some problems with the microphone. So just give me a second. Does anybody have any questions while I reboot myself here?
I do.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the bird being taxidermied? Because that was an interesting take you told me about.
Yes. So the bird, the taxidermied bird, was made in Holland by a woman called Christelle. Funnily enough, I use Crystal a lot. And the bird was sourced. It's completely illegal to kill a bird, a magpie, for taxidermy purposes. So she works with a ranger. So if ever there's, a deceased bird that they find, they give the bird to Christelle. So I was actually on a waiting list for a year to have that particular bird. And I sent the drawing of how I wanted him to be posed. So I can actually go back just to show you a few details. He is, I mean, he's
Joanna, you're slightly breaking up. Do you mind just
example.
repeating yourself there?
His claws to be, oh, sorry. So I wanted the claws to be wrapping around the edge of the jar so it looks purposeful. And there's a real kind of, clear angle there in the gaze between the 2 birds. So I'll come this side. This is a nice view.
It's really beautiful.
So, yeah, I wish you could all be here in person. So this is the same bird that was used in the samples that you saw. And I want to recreate this jar with that tension set process that I was talking to you about, so that I can have a bird be completely reflective and for you to have that moment, that, to be one with the mirrored bird inside that jar. So, yeah, 12 years to manifest a vision. It's kind of crazy, but I have this problem where, I'll have an idea and then I can't let it go until I've figured it out. And I also wanted to show you this piece very, very quickly. Let me just turn this around. So this is a roughness comparator. And a roughness comparator, for those of you that haven't heard of them, they're strips of metal used in industry to quantify surface precision. So this one, which is 2L, represents a reflective mirror. And so I wanted to duplicate that as a negative space inside the glass to see side by side what deviations occur. So it's really hard to see in a video on a screen, but there's a little bit of pitting here. I did not use wax to steam out, the positive of this little bar. I use silicone, but there is some degrade, the mold does degrade under the heat and that glass flow. So anyway, let's see if my computer's going to just give me 1 second. Do you have any more questions? You've got a very quiet audience here. Let me see. Okay. And I was just going to say, if my bandwidth, if anything happens again, then I can always, I'm just wondering if I could actually turn my screen around. Regina, do you think I should actually, because my phone is okay, do you think I should just play the PowerPoint through my phone? Would that be okay?
You
What do you
could,
think?
if we were able to see it properly, for sure.
Okay. If for any reason it cuts out again, I guess I've got that as a second backup.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you should be fine.
Okay. Right. I'm going to end this call and I'm going to go back onto the computer. Okay?
No problem. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. All right. Has anyone been able to see Joanna Manousis live? We did have her showcasing a couple of years ago. I don't know exactly. I don't know if Corey's still on, but he would know. Oh, there she is.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's share again. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. Do you want to just enable that for me?
I will go for it. Hold on 1 second.
It's done. It's
Oh,
done.
there you go.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay, I can whiz through these a bit more because you've got the backstory now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this is a piece called Figs and Urns. So again, the rose window motif, but really paring down that interior space. And this is as reflective as I could get. So here you could see the arrow kind of pointing to me. And I realized that, the interiors had to be made from glass, before making a mother mold to make the core. And also that cast mirrors look far more reflective on a curved surface than a flat surface, which is really unusual or surprising, I should say. So this is just a couple of process images. This is what a mother mold is to make duplicates. So I'm using rubber. And these are the cores. So this is an investment material that's poured into another mold, and then those cores are suspended. So this piece is called the golden thread. This is all cast in crystal. And what you see as a golden thread is actually a negative space that's been mirrored. So it's only when these decanters are in sequence that they act as a landscape to show that design. Again, a couple of process images. This is a piece, the making of bottled pear. So you can see the pear hanging out inside that pool of glass there, and the molds ready for firing. And these were the molds that were used to make bronzes for the finished piece, which is here. So this is a combination of cast and blown glass brought together to allude to this decanter being half filled with liquid. And then the branch is cast in bronze. So it's kind of about the residue of what was once there. So after 10 years of trying to figure this out on my own, I moved to Sunderland in England to work at the National Glass Centre, which is an incredible resource here in the UK. Unfortunately, it is going to be closing in 2 years. And my husband and I are both glass artists. So this was really the place that I felt would be the best fit for me to do my PhD program. And I'll whiz through these because you know the backstory of these, but these are the glasses that I started with for the material testing. And here are the molds of that lens that I just showed you with the finished samples. So I was looking at the flow of the glass, how it reacted to different temperatures, dry molds versus hot molds. This is a really nice comparison of the opacity that can occur just by bringing your temperature up by an extra 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So the image on the right has been fired at a higher temperature. I won't bore you with all the, the mixes that I was using, but it was a lot, about 130 little discs. So this is my contribution to the masses, guys. Casters out there will be able to have a better understanding of what works and what doesn't if you're trying to get a clear surface. But I really wanted to embrace all of these nuances. So the image on the right, is using a dental plaster, whereas the image on the left was just regular pottery plaster. And you can see yourself far more clearly in the image on the right. And here are those boron nitride pastes. So I'm just going to whiz through these. These are some of my mold setups for the tension set process for those enclosed samples. Obviously, everything had to be meticulously polished by hand in order for you to see the interior space. So those are the samples before mirroring, and this is afterwards. And I was really excited by some of these boron nitride coatings. And just to show you an example, so this piece, which is called Secret Knots, was cast in bullseye glass, unmirrored. The mirror, previous to my research, looked white. And then this is the same glass cast with a different interior recipe. And you can see how that mirror is reflective. And I did not use acid polishing for this. So again, the PhD really helps because I can, know what's going on and try and figure out a nicer surface if I don't have access to the acid. So this is the first iris obscura set of lenses, which you just saw in the gallery. And just to show you some of my mold setup. So this is the core of that interior space and the deliberate breaks. And this is the lens before mirroring, after mirroring. So you can see the mirror really illuminates like all the intricate inconsistencies in the surface. So every piece is unique. And that's the piece that you just saw in the gallery space. So moving on from those investment cast pieces, I wanted to talk to you about the graphite molding process. So my husband and I set up a business called Manberg Projects, and we are looking at how to create incredible wall designs that are completely interchangeable. So the sky's the limit in terms of the designs that can be had. This is a rendering on the left and the finished piece on the right. So these are blown and press molded pieces using mirrors inside. This is called Aurum, which is available. And this is a piece called Electri. And this is actually quite sizable. It's 54 inches high by 27 wide. And I've used a whiskey colored glass for the pentagons. So you get a really condensed color saturation at the point in the front. And then it delineates into a silver mirror, kind of like a Siamese cat. This is the same space that I'm in right now. This is a piece that my husband and I made called Concordia, which is 16 feet wide by about 6 feet tall. And then in the second year of my PhD program, I had some support through Arts Council England to look at these more intricate molds. So these are the prisms that I was just showing you. So really complicated, 6-part spliced up molds to create these angles, just to show you that mold in situ with the hot glass inside. And then this is Celeste. So this is about 1 year of R&D, coming up with the mold design, and then about a year of making. And there's me standing by the piece. So just to show scale.
We have a question in the chat, if you don't mind. Arlene Garfunkel would like to know, did you show at the Cheryl Haynes Gallery about 15 years ago?
No, I didn't. That wasn't me. No.
Well, thank you so much, Arlene, for your question. Go on, continue,
There's
Joanna.
somebody similar. Yeah, maybe there's somebody out there that but we can get back to that. Yes, no, that wasn't me. So here's the space. Here are the samples, as you can see. And interestingly enough, this particular piece, which is Mirror Palette 2, got into the British Glass Biennale, not my finished artwork. So obviously the tests are as interesting as the finished pieces. These are the magpie samples, and I have custom milled aluminium bases for these, so they act as individual pieces. And just a few process shots. So here's my mold setup for that spliced mold that I was talking to you about. So I'll spend days and days refining clay to make smooth surfaces. The image on the right is the roasting magpie before the glass has been ladled into the mold. You can see him at top temp looking out. And here is a piece before it's been mirrored. And I just want to show you this image on the right. So the left-hand image is a piece that hasn't been acid polished. And the image on the right has been acid polished. So you can see that the interior is as clear as the exterior, because the acid has eaten away all of that surface inside to give a completely pristine surface quality. So a lot of process, but you know, it's taken many years just to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. And as I said, you know, just changing the volume of glass flowing on a core can change the surface quality. So it's not that one thing fits all. Here's a few details of the distilled portrait. And it took many material transformations to get that negative space. So the bird was hand sculpted in clay and made to fit that jar perfectly. And then I made a master mold from that to be able to duplicate it in wax. I cast that wax bird in glass and polished the wings, and then made another master mold so that the master mold for the core would have a completely smooth surface, which you can see on the right-hand side. Here's me making the mammoth investment mold. So this is made in layers and then steamed. And then you can see the casting being divested. So all of this has to be meticulously picked away. The bird has to be removed with dentistry tools. And then I have to polish everything by hand on diamond wheels and wet bulb sanders. And here's the finished piece. So this room has got beautiful light because of the skylights. So it's perfect for mirrors, perfect for glass. And different times of the day, it really gives a different kind of sense of drama to each piece. So I want to thank you for putting up with my terrible microphone. I'm going to stop sharing here. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh,
There's someone in the chat, if you'd like to read. I don't know if you're able to read it, but I can read it. It's from Lynn Donnelly, and it's, I'm lucky to be a student at Sutherland, those specialized in ceramics. It's great to have Joanna there and see her work on her pieces. I certainly, sorry, this is in the way, vouch how much time she spends on creating her beautiful, intricate molds. I'm also so lucky to have a smaller piece of her latest work. How amazing.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Lynn. Yeah, we're really going to miss this community that we have here, you know, at the Glass Center. And it's wonderful to work with so many fabulous people who they all have the glass bug as well, or the ceramic bug, you know, glass and ceramics kind of work hand in hand. But yes, they've seen me labor over these, you know, mirrored pieces for a while. And at first, nobody really wanted to chat to me because what I was doing was so boring, you know, like casting the little cookie mold over and over. But, you know, you have to do all this legwork in order to kind of culminate to these finished pieces. So, yeah, thank you.
Without a doubt. Well, if anyone else has any more questions, this would be the time.
I do. Hi.
Hi, Corey.
Is Electri available? The piece that you showed, the sculpture that you showed, the wall piece, is that available? It was.
Yeah, it was at the Pittsburgh Glass Center show, and it's on its way to Momentum because I've got a small solo show with them. But so that piece is available with a different gallery. But the nice thing about those pieces is that you could come up with you could kind of come up with a number that you want or a space, and I could make something to fit that. And the pentagons can be blown in any color. So, if you wanted a pink piece, you could have that. So that those particular pieces with the graphite molds are far more customizable than, let's say, my core cast pieces, because obviously I've invested so much time in a piece that fits together in a very systematic way. But yes, I do have works in that vein available.
My
Yeah.
other question was a technical question. I apologize my naivety here, asking this question, but with all your exploration, maybe you can answer it in terms of your exploration basically into mirrors and the mirror work that you've done. What if there's an antique or vintage mirror over time, what causes the breakdown? Is that a breakdown? Is it tarnish? What exactly is that? What happens to mirrors over time?
Yeah, well, I'm using the chemical silver deposition technique, which is the technique that's used these days where you tin the glass so you're sensitizing the glass like a photograph would be to the silver. And it's a cocktail solution that reacts with the tin and creates a mirror. And it's less thick than a human hair. So it's very vulnerable, and you have to use a really good quality backing paint to stop moisture and air, getting to it. Otherwise, it will just dissipate over time. So it's really the backing paint that's really important. Older mirrors, mercury tin. So when you go into an older home and you see those mirrors decaying, it's because the mercury is crystallizing. That amalgam of the tin and mercury is starting to kind of change its structure. And so you'll find that the mirror is a lot grayer, and you get these kind of deposits occurring in the mirror, which isn't the case with the mirror process that I'm using. Obviously, I don't use the old-fashioned mercury method. It became obsolete for a reason. Yeah, I mean, mirrors are kind of a living and breathing thing. They are somewhat ephemeral. But with all the advances with the backing paints, I mean, I import my backing paint from the States. It's very good quality and hard wearing. But in 150 years' time, maybe there will be some differences. I'm not sure. I think if you lived, if you put this on a boat at sea and the sea air was hitting it, maybe that's more corrosive. Or if you're living in, a very humid, hot environment, that can also maybe kind of accelerate things. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I mean, I find the work that you've done just beautiful in its own right. I mean, just the samples, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a I mean, that exploration's a sculpture. Like I can't, I think it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I wish I could see. I want to see it. I feel like I need to see it, but I don't know if I can just fly to Sunderland to see it. So you said that you're going to have a show at Momentum, right?
Yeah, just a small show. It's not going to have it's not going to have all of this work in it. But they have some of the wall pieces, the blown wall pieces. And they also have a piece that I made many years ago, a lace structure. So it's kind of nice because it shows kind of a lineage, a progression. I may be sending a couple of the bird samples over. So if you happen to be in Asheville, take a look. If you want to fly to Sunderland, I'll welcome you here. I'm I'm deinstalling on the 25th. So and I am showing somebody else the exhibition on the 24th. So 24th is a good day if you want to come. I'll pick you up from Newcastle Airport, and you know, we can go to the beach. I'll show you the lighthouses.
It's a whole trip planned now, Corey. We gotta go.
I got 1 week to get there.
Yeah, I know, I know. I mean, this has been open for about 2 months and we had a great reception, but the space is not manned all the time. So the first month it was open 3 days a week for a couple of hours. And then it's been kind of on me to kind of be in here. I've done a lot of Zoom meetings with people abroad. So, you know, if you did want to see it more closely, then just send me an email and we can set up a Zoom call or, you know, yeah, it's I guess most work these days is seen through a screen, right? It's very rare that we get the opportunity to see things in person, but it doesn't meet the experience of seeing something visually like one-to-one, you know.
We have another question too, from Jude Morrison. She said you mentioned that, well, she loves your work first of all, but she said you mentioned that a use of tension set process rather than lost wax casting, sometimes to create a better surface for the mirroring. Could you tell us a bit about that process?
Yeah, and I was going to say June actually traveled from Edinburgh with Jeff Zimmer to come and see my show. So thank you,
Go
June.
June.
Yeah. So June, June's a mold maker. And so, yeah, usually when we cast glass, you know, it's like you make a wax form and you make a mold around it and you steam the wax out. Lost wax, it's gone. But when you steam the mold, it all that heat, all that moisture can kind of degrade the surface. So a tension set mold is essentially a mold that's made in 2 halves and brought together, right? So I've got a core, I've got a water bottle here. Imagine this is my bird, right? And then I've got my mold of the jar around it. So the mold is brought together in 2 halves around that bird and it tension sets the bird. It kind of like holds it with tension. And then I put a final coat of investment material to kind of glue it all together. That's kind of the process in a nutshell. But it is far more complicated, and you have to have more mother molds because you need a mold of the mold without that kind of being a brain teaser. So, you know, you've got a tension set mold, you've got a mold for the bird, you've got a mold of each side of the jar, and then you bring them together, if that makes sense.
Have you always just done casting with glass, or have you experienced different techniques?
Yeah, I've done everything. I used to be a blower, and I used to love making the goblets and the avolios, but then you know, the carpal tunnel set in, you know, and all of my ideas lent themselves to making a mold because when you blow glass, it's very much about the vessel.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was blowing, I was bringing that mold up to a hot temperature so that I could blow the glass into it and it would take on all of that detail. So if you look at my website, you'll see a piece called Reaching an Ulterior Realm, and they're mylar balloons. They look like real mylar balloons, but they're mirrored, they're blown in glass. I used to pull cane, Marini, and fuse it into these very intricate lace patterns. So if you look at Momentum Gallery's website, you'll see a huge installation that's about 10 feet wide of fused glass lace laminated on sheet glass.
Yeah.
So like I said, like previous to my like 3-dimensional mirror fascination, I would have an idea and then the idea dictated the method of the making. And so I worked in blown glass, fused glass, I flame worked, and also I teach glass. So it's good to have that material knowledge, you know, of all sorts of techniques so that you can, you know, give good advice to people, you know. But I think with casting, it's just that level of detail. You know, you can create anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have time today. Joanna, you have been amazing. You've put on such an amazing presentation, and also being able to tour your the exhibition too has been so fruitful and knowledgeable, and we truly, truly appreciate it. If you have any more questions for Joanna too after this, please email me. I can forward them to her. Other than that, I really appreciate everyone jumping on today and supporting glass. You guys are the ones that are continuously keeping glass alive. So we appreciate you so much. And yeah, I thank you again, Joanna, and have a great Saturday, everyone. Thank you so much for hopping on.
And happy
Bye.
Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. That's right. To all the dads out there, all the glass dads. We appreciate you. All right.
Bye. Thank
Have a
you.
great bye.
Bye, Lynn.
Bye.
Bye-bye.